We are staring down the barrel of a completely unprecedented era. In today's Explainer, we're going to explore some staggering, unparalleled forces that are quite literally reshaping the foundations of our world. And look, we aren't just talking about your typical incremental tech upgrades here. We're talking about the coming wave of artificial intelligence and synthetic biology. These aren't just fancy new gadgets we're adding to our tool belts. They represent the fundamental phase transition for humanity. We are touching the very building blocks of logic and life.
So, I want to start by asking you a really big question. What happens when humanity creates technologies it can no longer control? Seriously, I want you to keep this chilling question in the back of your mind as we go through the source material today. Because the stakes we're dealing with here aren't just economic, and they definitely aren't just political. They are entirely existential. We are rapidly approaching a threshold where our inventions might just outpace our capacity to manage them.
Take a listen to this. We are faced with a choice between a future of unparalleled possibility and a future of unimaginable peril. Now, that's a stark, sobering warning about our future. It sounds deeply human, doesn't it? But here's the truly shocking part. That text, which actually opens the prologue of our source material today, wasn't written by a human at all. It was completely generated by an AI. The machine itself is literally sounding the alarm about what comes next.
All right, let's dive into Section 1, the coming wave. You see, we're no longer just engineering bridges or writing basic software. We're actively engineering intelligence and life itself. This entire analysis is grounded directly in the book The Coming Wave by Mustafa Suleyman. As a co-founder of DeepMind, which is one of the absolute leading AI labs in the world, responsible for systems that mapped human proteins and mastered complex games, and later the co-founder of Inflection AI, Suleyman has an elite insider's perspective. He has quite literally been in the room as these technologies scaled at a breathtaking, unprecedented pace. And now, as a true pioneer of this tech, he is ringing the alarm bell.
The absolute crucial concept we need to grasp right off the bat is containment. Think back to the nuclear era for a second. Containing nuclear weapons was the defining challenge of the 20th century, right? But it was physical. You needed massive uranium mines, highly specialized centrifuges, billions of dollars. You could see a nuclear program from space. Today, that dynamic has completely flipped. AI and synthetic biology are digital. They run on laptops. They are decentralized. Our greatest challenge now is whether we have the ability to monitor, curtail, control, or potentially shut down these compounding technologies once they're unleashed into the wild.
So why is containment so incredibly difficult now? Well, it's because this coming wave has 4 unique features that make it fundamentally different from anything else in human history. First, there's asymmetry, meaning massive, historic power is being redistributed straight to the individual. Second, hyperevolution. These technologies are improving at a dizzying, exponential rate that our human brains just can't intuitively grasp. Third, omniuse. They aren't stuck in one industry. They're general purpose and can be applied to almost anything from medicine to warfare. And fourth, autonomy. They can increasingly act, decide, and execute completely without us. Put them together, and these 4 features make the wave uniquely uncontainable.
Which brings us right to Section 2, asymmetry and amplified power.
Let's look closer at how power is being radically redistributed. Historically, if you wanted to wield mass destructive capacity, you needed the resources of an entire nation-state, armies, navies, massive supply chains, the whole shebang. But that barrier to entry is completely dissolving. Asymmetry means that very soon, a single rogue operator, a disgruntled employee, or a tiny splinter group could wield the kind of disruptive power that used to require a legitimate government. We are moving from a world of tightly concentrated power to radically, dangerously distributed power.
$100 trillion. That is the massive, jaw-dropping utopian projection for the boost to global GDP that AI could potentially unlock over the coming decades. Curing diseases, solving massive logistics problems, providing infinite education for everyone. But there was a very dark mirror to this. Democratizing access to tools this powerful inherently means democratizing massive risk. We're entering an era where a single individual could potentially command a swarm of lethal, autonomous drones right from their laptop or use a desktop DNA synthesizer to engineer a pandemic from their garage.
Okay, moving on to Section 3, the gorilla problem. If asymmetric power wasn't enough of a headache for us, we face an even more fundamental threat to our own agency. It's elegantly captured by AI researcher Stuart Russell as the gorilla problem. Think about it this way. Gorillas are physically vastly stronger than us, but we contain them. We put them in zoos, we study them, entirely because we are smarter. By creating autonomous, self-improving artificial intelligences that eventually surpass our own cognitive abilities, we are inadvertently putting ourselves in the precarious position of the gorilla.
So the real question is, will we, the creators of this technology, be threatened by our own creation? If AI reaches a point where it can fully direct its own evolution, recursively improving its own code, getting smarter and faster every single millisecond, entirely beyond human comprehension, will humanity actually remain at the top of the food chain? The terrifying prospect that keeps researchers up at night is that we simply do not know what happens when we reach the absolute limits of human agency.
This perfectly sets up Section 4, the ultimate dilemma.
Because these technologies are rapidly compounding, dirt cheap, and virtually uncontainable, our entire species is being forced into an impossible corner. This right here is the core bind of the 21st century, the dilemma. It is the growing, horrifying likelihood that powerful new technologies will inevitably lead humanity toward either catastrophic outcomes or dystopian ones. I really want you to take a second and let that sink in. It is a sobering lose-lose scenario that we are hurtling towards unless something radically changes in how we approach innovation.
Let's break that down. On one hand, we face catastrophe. If we leave technology completely open, unregulated, and uncontained, it feels like only a matter of time before an engineered pandemic, an autonomous drone war, or a massive AI accident devastates the globe. But the alternative? It's dystopia. To actually prevent those catastrophes from some basement hacker, governments might be forced to build a mega machine. We're talking about a totalitarian, global surveillance system tracking every piece of code written, every single search query made, and every strand of DNA synthesized. It would effectively strip away all privacy and freedom just in the name of safety.
Now, you might be thinking right now, well, why don't we just pull the plug? Let's just pause all technological development globally until we figure this all out. But here's the catch. Stagnation is simply not a viable option. To freeze where we are right now would cause widespread societal implosion. We absolutely rely on constant technological progress to feed 8 billion people, to fight emerging diseases, and to transition our massive global economy away from fossil fuels. We can't go backward, and we sure can't pause. The only way out of this trap is through it.
And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, Walking the Narrow Path.
So, what exactly is the solution for our survival? It's what the source material calls walking the narrow path. This means striking a highly delicate, unprecedented balance between openness and closure. The text emphasizes that this isn't some comfortable final resting place that you just arrive at and forget about. It's a dynamic, highly unstable space. It requires constant, agonizing vigilance from every single one of us to ensure we don't fall off the cliff into total destruction or slip into the abyss of an authoritarian surveillance state. But how do we actually walk this path? Well, we need an interlocking web of containment mechanisms that cover every possible blind spot. Step 1 is deep technical safety. We need bulletproof, mathematically provable, code-level off switches and constraints built right into the DNA of these systems. Step 2, we need radically new business models that prioritize safety and human purpose over blind exponential profit. And step 3, massive national and supranational regulation. Think of it acting almost like an IAEA but for artificial intelligence to enforce boundaries globally. Every single one of these layers must work together if we're going to succeed.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on today. Containment is a narrow, never-ending path, and one single misstep leads to the abyss. As we engineer intelligence and literally reprogram life itself, the ultimate question isn't just what the technology can do. The real question is whether we, as a species, actually possess the wisdom and the discipline to keep our balance. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today on This Explainer.